What's an INTJ like? Take a deeper look and find out what makes this personality type tick. If you've already done a bit of research on the INTJ personality type, chances are good you've taken a look at the preferences. There are 8 preferences in Myers Briggs theory that include introversion and extroversion, intuition and sensing, thinking and feeling, and judging and perceiving. These preferences can be arranged into 4 dichotomous pairs of opposites. And based on which one you prefer, which one is your preference, that's going to play out in your 4 letter personality code. So for the INTJ, the preferences are introversion, intuition, thinking, and judging. So INTJs tend to be more private people who like to gather information, who tend toward objective logic, and like to have their worlds, to some extent or another, ordered and decided. But if we take a deeper look at the personality type, if we look at the mindsets or cognitive functions that drive them, we can learn a lot more. Take a deeper dive into Myers Briggs personality theory, and you'll find out that each personality is comprised of cognitive functions or mindsets that drive the personality. There are 8 cognitive functions in Myers Briggs personality theory, and each of the 16 personality types is made up of 4 cognitive functions. So when we look at the INTJ, it is comprised of introverted intuition, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, and extroverted sensing. And these functions occur in a hierarchy. So the first, introverted intuition, is the strongest and has the most influence on the personality, whereas the last, the inferior function, extroverted sensing, has an appeal, but it has the least influence on the personality. So let's take a look at each of your cognitive functions or mindsets in turn to take a way deeper look at why you do what you do and who you are. The first and most influential cognitive function in an INTJ's personality is something called introverted intuition, or NI. And from this point on, I'll refer to it as NI. NI is future oriented, it's also deep. So INTJs tend to like to be subject area experts. But interestingly, they also have an incredible breadth of knowledge. They love to spend time alone. And you'll notice that the attitude of introverted intuition, or its focus, is inward. It's also very broad, being an intuitive function. It likes to pull back and see the big picture. So INTJs can spend an incredible amount of time gathering knowledge, and they tend to know a ton about a variety of different topics. One of my college professors was an INTJ, not surprisingly, because INTJs tend to be among the highest performers in academic settings. But he was an INTJ, and the other professors always said that he knew a lot about a lot. And that was definitely the case for him because that was the way his mind was wired. INTJs are interested in future possibilities, and they can quickly see and understand complex ideas and patterns. So they are also excellent when it comes to designing systems to capitalize on future opportunities. Unfortunately, with such incredible ideas and connections, their language is somewhat complicated at times and difficult for other personality types to understand. But that doesn't mean their ideas aren't still very worthwhile, or that they can't communicate clearly and concisely, which they definitely can. INTJs can be very creative and original thinkers, and they can also be somewhat messy. While they do like organization and order, they like to be somewhat spontaneous as well. An INTJ's second cognitive function is something known as extroverted thinking. You'll notice right off the bat that this function is extroverted in its nature. So, unlike introverted intuition, which INTJs tend to use inwardly and spend the majority of their time on, when they're connecting with other people, the first thing that other people will probably notice about them is the logic that they share with the world. So, they tend to be objective, logical thinkers who don't first think about how their thoughts and their words affect other people's emotions. That doesn't mean that they're not in tune with other people's emotions, but more that they're worried about the bottom line and solving practical problems. And INTJs are definitely that. Many INTJs are excellent with numbers. I have an INTJ friend who took AP Physics in high school and studied the content, but when it came to take the test, he was given the wrong assessment. He was still able to pass it because he had an incredible ability to figure out mathematical problems, and he got a 3 and was able to get out of the course in college. When you put introverted intuition and extroverted thinking together, you get someone who's exceptional when it comes to creating systems that can be used again and again without problems. That's definitely the case of the INTJ friend that I mentioned earlier. He does a great job. In fact, he even, for fun, helped organize a friend's wedding because he was able to think through all the potential problems and create systems that would keep people where they needed to be at the right time and also keep things flowing smoothly. I know another lady at our church who's also excellent for the same sort of thing, but it doesn't have to apply to something like a wedding. Often INTJs are vice presidents and CFOs, people who speak into the president's ear and help them design hierarchies and systems that can keep an organization running and running quite well. Just to be clear, not all INTJs are numbers people. Some enjoy things like photography and design, and they have a variety of interests. I know that the professor that I mentioned earlier wasn't so numbers inclined. He still did well enough in statistics, but he was an educator through and through and penned our instructional design book and also taught us educational psychology. In general, INTJs do well in business, in the sciences, and in academic settings, but they can excel at many of the things that they put their minds to. We've talked a bit about extroverted thinking now. Let's take a look at the third INTJ cognitive function. The third INTJ cognitive function is introverted feeling. And this is also a cognitive function with an introverted attitude or direction. So it's something that you won't realize about INTJs until you get to know them particularly well. And this function causes INTJs to want to be unique. It also causes them to be really close with those who are in their family and to be protective of those family members. The professor that I mentioned earlier, whom I had the opportunity to get to know, had a very close relationship with his children and with his wife and spent a lot of time nurturing and taking care of them. It can also make an INTJ a great listener. Another friend of mine who's an INTJ is actually a psychologist because he is such a great listener. So he does have an ability to hear and empathize with his patients, but then he can come up with data driven solutions that help them solve their problems. This third function makes INTJs balanced decision makers. While outwardly it appears that they prefer and tend to focus primarily on extroverted objective logic, which is true to some extent, they also are able to make decisions based on their personal preferences and what they care about, values, and what's really true to them. And they can use it in connecting with others, especially if they spend some time developing it. For most INTJs, however, it's probably wise for them to focus on extroverted thinking as opposed to introverted feeling. But to some extent, they need to honor their core values, what they really feel is important, and the people who are close to them. The fourth and final cognitive function in an INTJ's hierarchy is extroverted sensing. And this is the inferior function for the INTJ. In any personality type's personality, the inferior function has somewhat of an appeal, but it's also an Achilles heel. So early on in type development, an INTJ might get into activities or interests that require a lot of extroverted sensing. For instance, one of those activities might be musical pursuits that require a lot of in the moment awareness of sounds and creative expression, or they might be more graphically inclined interests like photography. That's not to say that an INTJ who's very interested in those things can't succeed, because he or she definitely can. But it probably won't be as natural as connecting introverted intuition and extroverted thinking to do some kind of business or science pursuit, as many tend to do. Much depends on the particular INTJ. But it's safe to say that all INTJs need a little bit of extroverted sensing in their life. They need an opportunity to go for a run, for instance, or to engage in some kind of yoga or exercise at the gym, or some kind of activity like cooking that gives them the opportunity to engage their senses and to be present in the here and now. It's also important to keep in mind that when an INTJ is particularly stressed out, he or she will get overwhelmed by extroverted sensing. So if all of a sudden the demands of everyday life, such as bills and taxes and sick children and a flat tire on a car or needing to get the oil changed, all come in, they can make the INTJ overwhelmed and stressed out, so that maybe the person will overeat or undereat or only pay attention to exercising or not sleep or watch TV all the time or eat a bunch of junk food. all these sort of things and more that can create a bunch of problems. And credit to Dave Powers of Dave's Superpowers channel for some of those insights as well. But it's important that an INTJ keep an eye on the details and expect that when overwhelm comes, extroverted sensing is going to be a bit of a challenge. But it's also important that he or she make time to get involved in the moment and to be present, because it's all too easy to get wrapped up in future thoughts, future possibilities, or to be caught in thoughts about complex ideas when really it's important to be present with other people or to be engaged in the current moment. If you'd like to take an even deeper look at your personality and better understand what makes you tick, as well as how you can leverage your gifts, then I'd love to work with you. Just visit personalityadvisor.com and click on the link that says schedule your coaching call to schedule a coaching call with me. You can find the link to that page in the description below this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it helpful. If you'd like to see more videos like it, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. I'll be creating new ones on a regular basis. I'll see you on the next show.